Hello everyone, welcome to Helps YouTube live video. My name is Eric Olsen, attorney now for 46 years, the founder of Helps. Helps is a national law firm that represents seniors and disabled persons, really of any age, who receive protected income such as Social Security, pension, disability, VA benefits. We represent them under a federal law called the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act. It's called FDCPA. That provides if you're represented by an attorney, debt collectors can no longer call or send you demand letters anymore. And that's our main mission. Our second mission is to educate seniors how you can maintain your financial independence. And welcome to our YouTube channel today. We do this Monday through Thursday for an hour. You can look at our past videos. We appreciate you participating. And if you have a question, you can put it in the chat feature and I'll try to answer it. And good to have you here today. The topic I decided for today was how debt management and debt settlement companies scam seniors. And I'll tell you why I put that up. And I talk about this a lot. I'll read you a note from one of our paralegals that enrolled someone yesterday in Helps. The lady was 76 years old. Her income was around $1,800. She was taking care of her 10-year-old grandson and had him since he was a baby. And here are the notes from our paralegal. Some poor woman called in because she's been paying $400 a month to National Debt Relief, taking care of her great-grandson. And paralegal put in parentheses, yikes. She hasn't seen, okay, well, I won't need to read that, but okay. She's getting increasingly difficult to get money. Turns out she received solicitation letters for a pending lawsuit from different attorneys. I told her to send us when she gets served. Husband passed away, left her with credit card debt and homeowner issues. So we talked to her, I believe we enrolled her, but one of the things we would have told her is that she didn't need to be part of National Debt Relief. And one of the things we would ask her is, when you enrolled with National Debt Relief, did they tell you, by the way, you don't need our help because all your income is Social Security and pension. It's protected. No one can take it. I can assure you that the answer is no. They never told me that. They never told you that. So, with rare exceptions, debt management companies, including nonprofit debt management companies and debt settlement companies, which are for-profit, they both don't tell seniors a very important fact that their income is protected. And here this lady is taking care of her great-grandson who's 10 years old. She's 76 and getting minimal income, and she's paying, how much did I say she was paying? $400 a month, the National Debt Relief. Wow. And then on top of that, she's got to make a little house payment, food, maintenance, take care of her great-grandson. You know, it's sad what these debt management, debt settlement companies do. And why do they do it? Well, the reason they do it is because they get paid. If you pay them money, then the nonprofit ones have a prearranged agreement with the credit card companies that they get to take a certain percentage out as a donation. They'll never tell you that when you enroll, but nevertheless, the fact is there. And then also they get contributions from the creditors, or from the credit card companies, because they collect money on their behalf. I read the financial statement for one of these a few years ago, and almost a third of their clients were seniors. So if they were to tell a senior that their income was protected, senior would realize they don't need their help. They wouldn't sign up with them, and they make less money than they do. So yeah, it's really sad. So this is how they scam seniors, by not telling them the complete truth. And the other thing, I got on one of their websites today, I'll read about it later, and they have their reviews, but then they have all these little certificates on their website, approved by all these different little things. Whenever I see that, you know, I almost say to myself, boy, they're really reaching to try to convince some people that they're not really a scam. But that's what they are. When it comes to seniors, the scams. Now, they may help younger people, okay, but for a senior whose income is protected, their help really isn't necessary. And I don't mind them trying to help people as long as they told them the truth, but they don't tell them the truth. They leave that out completely. Yes, it is a crime what they do. Someday, hopefully, there could be some legislation on that. But right now, nothing. Here's a comment someone made. I noticed this morning too. And I haven't talked about it. It says, this guy says, credit cards were always designed to keep people in debt. And he says, I'm amazed a law exists to protect seniors, and I'm a helps client who has gotten rid of credit card debt. You know, he's right. You know, credit cards are designed to keep you there. Okay. First, they're really easy to get generally, okay, relatively. And a lot of times they'll offer attractive entry interest rates that eventually can go up to significant amounts. And once you owe over a certain amount, then they raise the interest rate, and then you can't afford to pay it off. So most of your money is going towards interest and maybe very little towards principal. I remember reading statistics saying that sometimes, you know, at the rate they charge, the interest they charge, it might take you 20 years to pay off a credit card debt. So it's just like a revolving door. It's like a treadmill. They want you to keep paying, okay? You know, HELPS isn't here to tell you that you shouldn't pay your debt. We're here to tell you that, you know, if you have debt that you can't afford to pay, that lawmakers have passed laws to protect your income. So it's available for your needs, for your food, for your medicine, for your heat, for utilities, for things that you need. And if you stop paying the debt, there's a law that provides that you can stop the creditors from harassing you. That's the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act, passed in 1978. You send what's called a cease and desist letter, and the debt collector has to, you know, stop contacting you by phone or mail. Okay. And it also provides if you're represented by an attorney, then the debt collector has to deal with the attorney, and that's what HELPS does. You know, before starting HELPS, I filed between 20 and 30,000 bankruptcies, or between 30 and 40, a whole lot. I know that for decades. And seniors would come in, and I talk to them, and I tell them, hey, you don't need to file bankruptcy. And a lot of them couldn't afford to file bankruptcy, but I know if we sent them home, the creditors were going to still call them and make their lives miserable. So HELPS was started in 2012 to be able to represent seniors ongoing as their attorney, so they don't have to deal with debt collectors. And that's what we do. People find out about us. They call us on the phone. We interview them, and we can sign them up immediately over the phone if they want. And they get us the creditors. We send what's called a cease and desist letter out, and peace is going to come back to your life. So we don't want you to worry. That's our other main message to seniors. You don't need to worry. Now, if you're sued, you're not going to have to go to court. You're going to be fine that way. Okay? If you heard that, that was the piano. I think the cat stepped on the piano. Yeah, you should pay the whole amount due, but it's very tempting if you don't have enough to let it accumulate. So this person calls us from Ohio. I am concerned. Both me and my wife have more than 80 years of work between us. However, due to multiple illnesses, heart attacks and strokes, we both had to retire early. We lost our retirement savings and find we have mounting credit card debt just to survive. I've looked at our finances, and it's pretty obvious if we do not have to pay the credit cards each month, we would be able to cover our housing, food, medical debt, and medication. Also medical bills. It played a big part in landing us in the present situation. Thank you for any assistance you can give. Credit card is in my name, if that makes any difference. Maybe. Some cases. Bottom line is, yeah, you're not going to have to pay that debt. Your income is Social Security, maybe a pension. You can stop paying the credit card debt and you're going to have enough money for your basic needs, for your food, for your medicine, for your medications, medical needs. Yeah. And when you enroll in HELPS, you're going to give us the creditors you owe money to. We're going to send them a cease and desist letter and they're going to leave you alone. And then if you get another notice from a new debt collector in the future, you send that to us. We send a new cease and desist letter out to that new debt collector and they're going to leave you alone. That's what the Fair Debt Collection Practices provides, that if you're represented by an attorney, these collectors have to leave you alone. And that's what we do. So this person in Ohio, they're going to be fine. We'll call them back. We're going to tell them about the program. I'm sure they're going to enroll with HELPS, and we're going to tell them not to worry. They probably have plenty of other things to worry about. That's what I tell people sometimes. I mean, I talked to someone, I do it every day, but yesterday I talked to someone who was very worried about this. I said, now listen, you don't need not to worry about the debt problems anymore. You stop worrying about that. Okay, whatever you do not need to worry about it. You pick something else to worry about. If you're inclined to worry, that's fine, but you do not need to worry about this. And I said, what do you do if you start to worry about this again? And the person said, call HELPS. That's right, you call us whenever you're worried. Yeah. So this person called from Michigan, and I think it was the daughter. Dad was in his latter 80s. He received Social Security and VA benefits. She was very worried, and she had power of attorney for her dad. She'd been living with him for some time, okay? And he had a home with some equity in it. And she was worried that when he passed away, the home, there was a little bit of money owed on it, but the equity in the home would go to his creditors. But she'd been helping supporting her dad. So one thing, we don't give legal advice, we give legal information. We did tell her that, if you own the home with your dad jointly as joint tenants with rights of survivorship, that means you both had an interest in the home. And that type of deed provides that when one of you pass away, the other one gets the home. And so if you own the home with your dad as joint tenants with survivorship rights, then when dad passes away, the home would automatically go to you. There'd be no probate and no need for any of dad's debt to be paid. And it really wouldn't be a gift because you've been living with your dad, caring for him, helping support him, and that would go towards the equity in the home. So she was going to look into that. That's up to her. We sent her an email on how that's done, joint tenants with rights of survivorship. HELPS, we don't give legal advice, we give legal information, but the legal information we give is pretty basic stuff. But if she did own it jointly with her dad with rights of survivorship, and when dad passes away, the home's going to be in her name. There won't be any probate, and none of his debt will need to be worried about being paid. And problem solved. But the most important thing, I guess, is that she'd been paying her dad's credit card debts, and she could stop doing that. That was taking a significant amount of their money to pay his credit card debt. He did receive Social Security and VA benefits, okay? And it wasn't a lot of money, but it was a fair amount. And so that money was going to be available to, help take care of dad, give her some respite care if she needed someone else to come in and help take care of him, maintain the house payment, everything. So we're happy to talk with seniors about their financial situation and what they can do to, make things better. like I said, our second mission is to educate seniors how to maintain their financial independence. So that's one reason when you call, we ask you a series of questions. You know, obviously your name and where you live and what state you're in. You know, we need that kind of information because, you know, state laws vary. And your age, because, you know, the problem of a senior in the low 60s are going to be different from a senior who's in his upper 80s. And, you know, we're going to ask if you're married, okay? Because obviously if you're married, then, you know, different things need to be taken into consideration about what can be done to help you. You know, how much you owe in debt, you know, approximately. Is the debt in both you and your wife's name or husband's name, or do you owe it together? Are you buying a home or renting? If you're, how much you're paying in rent, that tells us, you know, how much money you have left over, or if you're paying too much in rent. So we could tell you about Section 8. Are you buying a car? How much what's it, your make and model? What do you owe on the car? What is it worth? Okay, so we can determine, you know, does it make sense to keep the car, or you know, maybe you could, you know, you can keep the car, or maybe letting the car go back could make sense. We could talk to you about that. You know, depending on what you owe on the home and the equity in your home, we might talk about a reverse mortgage. You know, we don't sell reverse mortgages. I just let people know about them when it looks like it might be something they could consider. Okay. And we talk about taxes. You know, do you owe any income taxes? Because a lot of seniors don't realize if they owe income taxes, very likely, if they owe IRS, can get on what's currently not collectible status and not have to pay those taxes. And if they owe state taxes, we let them know that they really don't need to be paid because your state tax collector can't touch your Social Security or your pension. Explain how your bank account is protected, and maybe if you're being sued, why you don't need to go to court. And what happens if you are sued down the road, what we do to help you so you don't need to worry about that lawsuit. So we do a lot of things, and so we ask these questions, and then after we're done asking, we read a little script about what we do. The fee for helps is minimal. Maybe 1 out of 6 of our clients get our help for free. We don't turn anyone away. But you know, we want it to work for seniors so that we can protect you so you don't need to worry about that. As far as I know, we're the only law firm in the nation that does what we do. It's very needful. And we're busy. Okay, this person wrote in, they said, "Hi Eric, I talked to you before. I have a $1,000 credit card I've been sued for. Now I also have medical bills also coming in to get their money. Do they ask you during a debtor's exam where you work and where you bank? I have to have a part-time job in order to make it with my Social Security." So if you've listened to me for a while, you understand that debtor's exams is something I don't like to talk about. Not that I'm scared about it, except that it's so rare and it seems to strike fear in people's hearts that's unnecessary. And so I usually just like to talk about them when someone calls me. But, you know, we're not afraid to talk about anything. It helps. So what's a debtor's exam? If someone were to sue you and get a judgment, it's possible that they could ask you to come into court to answer questions regarding your assets. And that sometimes that's called a debtor's exam. It might have a different word in some states, but normally it's a debtor's exam. Now, the judge isn't the one that's going to ask you the questions. It's the attorney who has the judgment. He asks the questions. Normally what happens is the judge would just put you under oath and then put you in a room with that attorney. Then he could ask you questions. Now, is it going to happen? Unlikely. When one of our clients calls us and they give us paperwork and they've had a debtor's exam, you know, we'll reach out to the attorney, and we don't represent you in court, but we'll tell the attorney, hey, this person's income, Social Security, this is what it is, here's a proof of it, and they get this little pension. They don't have anything. Do you really want them to come in to answer? This is going to be difficult for them. You know, they don't get around that easy, you know, whatever the facts are. And the vast majority of times we can get it worked out where you don't have to go to court, because it's going to be a waste of time for them to go to court and ask these questions. Now, if you did have to go to court, it's not to worry about. Unlikely, again, it's going to happen. That's why I don't like to talk about it. Once in a while, if that were to happen, I would write a little email and that you could just read to the attorney. And a number of times I've had people tell me that, yeah, I just read that to the attorney before the judge came in. The attorney said, go ahead and go home. I'm just going to tell the judge we're not going to do this today. Because they know they can't get anything from you. And if they know you know your rights, that your income's protected, then it doesn't do them any good to try to intimidate or scare you. So try not to worry about this debtor's exam thing. But let's say this guy's asking, he's working. Well, I'll talk about that, and you've heard me say this before. But a lot of you, heard me say the same things, so I apologize. But a lot of new people are on this channel. So $217.50 net per week in wages is protected in every single state. Okay, that's a federal law. But a lot of states protect a lot more than that net per week in wages, and some states don't even permit a garnishment of wages. So this guy's saying he's working part-time in order to make things work. Well, first off, for him to have a problem, is someone would have to sue him, and then they get a judgment, and then they'd have to know where he works. So if he's a member of HELPS and he gets sued, we're going to send a letter to the attorney and let him know that his income Social Security is protected. They get a judgment. Normally that's the end of it, okay? But let's say they happen to, how are they going to find out where he works? If he hasn't been working there that long, there's no place you can go to find out where someone works. There's not a website that says this person works here and that person works there and whatever. I mean, if you work there long enough, then there may be some other information they could get from other sources. But let's say they did find out where you work. Okay. And so if they did file a writ of garnishment, like I explained, depending on the state where you live in, so much is protected, but a minimum of $217.50 net per week is protected. You could adjust your wages down. You could look at filing a bankruptcy. We talk about those things, but I usually tell people, no, keep working or go to work. The chances of you having a problem with your wages being garnished is really, really, really small. We just don't run into that with HELPS hardly ever at all. And we've got thousands of clients, and a lot of them work. Not all of them, but a certain amount do work. So I don't discourage anyone from going to work, okay? Doris says, I just heard from a friend in Google that President Donald Trump and Elon Musk is trying to cause the Social Security Administration to collapse in April 2025. You heard about this? No. Only from comments on YouTube or other places. No. I think Trump has made it very... I'm not political, okay? But I've heard Trump say many times that Social Security is not going to be affected, okay? So your benefits aren't going to be affected. Social Security is here to stay. I think all the talk about Social Security is that they did some investigation and found out there's a lot of people maybe getting Social Security that may be not entitled to it, okay? And that's what they're trying to ferret out and find out. Now, I note that they've cut some employees out from Social Security. Is that going to affect the way Social Security services people? I don't know. Maybe a little bit. Could. It could be the fact that maybe the Social Security Administration could possibly be a little bit bloated. Things could be more efficient, but your Social Security ain't going to be affected, okay? And if it were, seniors will scream to high heaven, and I guarantee it'll get straightened out really, really fast, because a significant percentage of seniors rely on Social Security. That's their only source of income. Government isn't going to cut that off. That'd be political suicide. So they're not going to do it, okay? Doom pundits cashing in. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Some people just like to scare other people. And the problem is you read something and then you repeat it and it gets repeated again and repeated again. If you read something so many times, you can begin to believe that it's true. So that's why I talk about it. That's why I say something about it. Looks like my camera just went out of focus. Maybe you get a blurry face for the rest if helps YouTube Live. Or maybe it'll just correct itself. So this person from Georgia contacted us. The attorney that got a judgment against me sent a writ to the courts in Georgia. My concern is that my house has $300,000 equity, but the judgment against me is for $10,000. Will they be able to make me sell my home? It's my primary residence. And here's my response. This was I think one of our YouTube videos, it was a comment. Helps doesn't see consumer creditor, judgment creditors trying to enforce judgments by executing on a home with equity over the state exemption. It can be complicated and expensive and other reasons why it would not make sense. You can always call Helps with your questions, 855-435-7787. So, you know, the homestead exemption in Georgia, I forget what it is, but it's not anywhere near to protect $300,000 equity. So does that mean that if this lady has a judgment, I don't know if it's a lady or man, whatever, this person has a judgment against for $10,000, that the creditor is going to try to foreclose on their home? No, I don't see it happening, ever. Now, theoretically possible, yeah, but there's a lot of reasons why it doesn't happen. One reason is it's expensive. One reason it could be stopped. There's various ways it could be stopped. They just don't do it. They're happy to let the judgment sit there, collect interest, and hopefully get paid when you sell the home or it gets refinanced. So that's why I told this person, I don't think you really need to be concerned about someone coming in to take your home. And if they were to do something like that, which they don't do, but if they were, you got plenty of time to get it worked out. Okay. So that's what I tell this person in Georgia. So Doris asks, she says, I'm on, it says SSI. Well, SSI has, you know, there's Social Security, and then there's Social Security disability. There's different forms of Social Security. And the SSI is, you know, SSI can be a minimal Social Security if you don't have enough credits for working, if you haven't worked in the past. Sometimes they even call it a welfare benefit in some way. So because of that, SSI has really broad protections. No one can really get at it. Okay. They can't even take it for past due child support. Mary says, I had garnishment over $800 taken from my checking account, and now there isn't enough in there to cover my bills. Well, okay, you know, we've talked about this before, that if your Social Security gets deposited into your bank account, there's a federal rule put into effect in 2012 that instructs banks that if they get rid of garnishment, they're to examine your bank account. And if money went in there from a federal source like Social Security or a federal retirement or a VA benefit, federal source, They take the amount you get each month times 2 and automatically protect that from garnishment, regardless of what other funds are in there or where they came from. So if you've got, you know, 1,200 from Social Security, 2,400 in your bank account is protected automatically. Now, if you did lose $800, from your checking account, if it was an account to which Social Security didn't go, then yeah, they could take that out. But if you could trace the money that came from a federal source like Social Security, then you could file what's called a challenge to garnishment or claim of exemption to get it released. Or if you had money in your account over twice the amount of your Social Security, yeah, they could hold up that extra money, but you can file a challenge to garnishment or claim of exemption with the court, and the court would order that money be released. You've got to do that right away, though. Depending on the state, there's a time limit. You have to do it promptly. Under the law, the banks have 48 hours to examine your account to determine if the money came from Social Security or from a federal source, and then order it be released. So, and sometimes people call us, they got rid of garnishment, and their bank account has been held up for a day or two. Most of the times the banks are really on it, and they release it immediately. But it could be held up by law for up to 48 hours for them to examine your account. There used to be some problems with mistakes, with banks not understanding this rule. After all, it's been in effect for only 14, 15 years. But I always tell people, and it's true, I always say, I bet 999 out of 1,000 attorneys don't know this rule, and I've yet to talk to a bank manager that understands the rule. So if you talk to your bank manager or someone in the bank, they're not going to know it, but a department in the bank that deals with garnishments, they know that. Okay. If that were to happen to one of our clients, you would call us, we'd go over it with you, and we'd help you with what to do. That's what we do. I wouldn't be surprised, Mary, if that was the money in your checking account was the money into which Social Security went, and the amount in there was less than twice the amount of your federal benefit. So if you got $1,500 in Social Security, that times 2 is be $3,000. If it was less than $3,000, that when you look at your bank account next time, you'll see that money has been put back in your account. They've not put a hold on it. Okay? That's what we hear. But if there was a problem and your member of helps you get a hold of us, we'll help you with it. This is a note from someone from Michigan. I'm not able to pay my credit card debt. What do I do? Do I just stop paying? Do I send them a letter? How do I do this? Well, yeah, you can just stop paying. If you're on income, Social Security, or pension, sure, you can stop paying. You don't have to send a letter to stop paying. You just stop paying. The reason a letter gets sent is to let a debt collector know that you don't want to hear from them anymore, in writing or by phone, and they have to leave you alone. That's what HELPS does. We represent seniors so that they give us the creditors they owe money to. We send a cease and desist letter, and they leave you alone. So, yeah, you don't have to tell anyone, call anyone up and say, I'm not going to pay you anymore. You just stop paying them. Person contacts us from Kentucky. I'm a 70-year-old widow who would like some information on a situation I'm regarding paying off a credit card debt through National Debt Relief. I was fortunate to catch a program on YouTube on senior living, and I've learned things I wasn't aware of. Yeah, that's why we do these videos, and I'm thankful for senior living. We do videos with them. We did one You know, 2 weeks ago Friday it went viral, and we've had lots of people calling us on that video. I'm paid $600 a month through national debt relief, and being on Social Security and very small pension has come to the point where I just cannot keep doing this. You know, if I talk to this lady, the first thing I'd ask her, did they tell you when you enrolled with national debt relief that your income was protected, that you didn't need to pay the debt? And I'll tell you what, the answer is going to be, no, Mr. Olsen, they never told me that. Of course they didn't tell you that. If they would have told you that, you wouldn't have enrolled with them. They would be making money off you. And that's why I started this video today, how debt management and debt settlement companies scam seniors. How they scam them? It's fraud. They don't tell you the complete truth. See, a fraud can be many things. Fraud can be, there can be criminal fraud, there can be civil fraud, but one element of fraud is withholding a critical piece of information that for your financial benefit and detriment to the other person's finances. So if you're a debt management company, a nonprofit one, and you don't tell a senior that their income is protected, you're withholding information from that senior to their detriment and to your benefit, because now if they sign up with you, you make money, and the senior is going to be paying debt that they could have realized they don't have to pay. So I'll go on. I just cannot keep doing this when just buying essentials is difficult. I don't want to do anything that would get myself in trouble, but I don't know how to go about finding a way out. Any advice you would give me would be greatly appreciated. That's why Helps is here. That's why you're listening to me today. I'm here to tell you, if you're a senior and you have debt and you're getting Social Security or pension or retirement income, your income's protected, you can stop paying the debt. You know, our clients are generally poor or lower income or modest income. You know, the half of seniors that have plenty of money, you know, they can pay their debt, or they don't have debt. The seniors that have these problems, at least the ones we deal with, are the seniors that are poor, the seniors that are struggling, that don't have a lot of money, okay? And you can stop paying the debt. And what Helps does is represent you, so they got to leave you alone. And we're there for you. Call us whenever you want. So, yeah, if you're a prospective client of Helps, you can always call us with your questions, no matter how often. Don't want you to worry. Can they take our DOG, Department of Government Efficiency stimulus we might get? Well, I heard it talked about one time. I don't know that that's going to be the case, that we would get, that there would be one made available. But if it were available, usually there's a provision in the law that protects that from a creditor, okay? Social Security must keep phone service. I think they still do. I don't think there's any question about that. You know, we have a form email. The most common thing that our clients deal with Social Security on is if they're going to change to a different bank account, and they need to let Social Security knows to have the money go, and that their Social Security needs to go to a different bank account. And I always tell people you can do it different ways. One is you can do it online, which is the easiest way to do it. Do it by phone or in the office. In the office would be the most difficult way to do it. You got to get down there. Phone, you have to wait on the phone. Do it online is easy. Now, I do realize that some seniors, you know, there were some comments that I read about, you know, some seniors are not internet savvy. If you were on Hoops YouTube live yesterday, you realize I'm not internet savvy that much, you know, and I understand. A lot of times I'll tell people, you know, get a grandkid to help you, or one of your daughters or sons, or someone who's internet savvy to help. Okay. Yeah, it's just a fact of life that we're dealing with this computer age. And, I have noticed over time that as seniors age, more seniors are getting more computer savvy. The seniors that are less computer savvy, they're passing on. Okay. I imagine that when my kids are my age, there's going to be very few seniors that are not computer savvy. You might agree with me. There's not too many young people that don't know how to use their cell phones. They don't know how to text. They know how to text. They know all this stuff. And so when they're old, everyone's going to be computer savvy at some point. Yeah, your survivor benefits are protected. All forms of Social Security are protected. If you owe debt, you don't need to pay it. Okay. Person from South Carolina contacted us. A retired, can't pay my credit cards. Interests have doubled. I rent, which I can't pay my rent. In danger of eviction. I need help. Please send me info on where I am to turn. I don't work. I'm 71. I'm bad health. Please let me know if you can help me. Yeah, we can help you. I can't put more money in your pocket, but I can. Helps can't do that, but we can tell you, where you can stop paying money, and that the money you have can be protected for you. We can give you information about. There may be a veteran benefit you might be entitled to. Maybe if you're paying too much for rent, we can tell you about Section 8 housing. Maybe if you're buying a home and you have a lot of equity in it, we might be able to tell you about a reverse mortgage, what that could do. It could pay off existing mortgage, give you access to a line of credit, make things a lot easier for you. And tell you why you don't need to pay these credit cards, why you don't need to worry about a lawsuit, why you don't need to worry about debt collectors harassing you, why you're not going to need to go to court, on and on and on and on. See, our main function is to protect you from the creditors bothering you, but our second function is to educate you so you could realize you can maintain your financial independence. And we've got a lot of information for seniors that way. You can always call. This person contacted us, said, I've been divorced for a year now, and I'm a senior citizen on disability. The credit card bills were all in my name only. Can the debt collectors come after my spouse? No. If they're only in your name, they can't come after your spouse. He is not a senior citizen yet, but he does help care for me still. Yeah, you don't need to worry about if you don't pay your debt, the credit cards aren't going to come after your divorced spouse. You don't need to worry about that. Credit cards in your name only are going to be your debt. And if you're getting alimony, if someone were to sue you and get a judgment, your alimony is protected. And we'll go over and answer your questions. You're going to be fine. So this person contacts us from the great state of Nevada. Once again, he says, I'm paying off my debt through a company called DebtBlue. I got on their website when I hadn't, I probably heard of them. And they had a big fancy website. And I scrolled down at the bottom. They had all these logos, tons of them, about all their people that recommend them, all their affidavits. And when I saw that, I said, that's all sign of a scam. Let me read the rest of this. By the way, I'm 82 years old. Oh my gosh. But now I did receive a summons for a debt I owe, which DebtBlue was responsible for, but never paid a cent to the creditor. Yeah. The first thing I asked this person, if I ever talked to him on the phone, I'd say, did DebtBlue tell you, you're 82, ma'am or sir. All your Social Security, your pension is protected. You don't need to pay these creditors anymore. They can't do anything to you. Well, no, Mr. Olsen, they never told me that. No, they didn't tell you that. If they told you that, you wouldn't have signed up with them and they wouldn't make money. So I say that to JetBlue and all these companies. You're dishonest. You should be ashamed of yourself. You know, some of them hide behind the fact that they don't ask a person their source of their income. You know, why don't they do that? Maybe they assuage their guilt when they know they're talking to someone, they know there's a senior and they know there's Social Security. If they were to ask them, do you get Social Security, then maybe they would feel guilty. They'd have to, you know, tell them. But no, they don't do that. They don't do that. So if you're signed up with a debt management company and you can't afford it, you can drop them anytime you want. Stop making the payment. Call them on the phone. Ask them for a refund. I tell people, ask them, when I enrolled with you, why didn't you tell me that my income was protected? Some people tell me they've been cutting back on my medications. I say, tell them. Say, I've been cutting back on my medicine. I've been cutting my heart medicines in half so I could pay you. And now I find out that I didn't need to pay you because my Social Security was protected. Why didn't you tell me that? Now, the little guy that signs you up, or gal, you know, they're just a clerk. They probably don't educate them about that. But I guarantee the upper-ups for these companies know about this. You know, they just watch out for their own interest. Like I said, they're frauds. They're scammers when it comes to seniors. Now, there are a few exceptions. Not many. See, we hear about this all day long. So it's really easy for me to get really cynical. But it's ethical cynicalness. I mean, I have a right to be cynical about these companies. Because I talk to people that are affected by them all the time. I'm 68, retired with Social Security and small pension for income. Okay. This is another one. I am approximately $45,000 in credit card debt that is currently being handled by National Debt Relief on a settlement program. From what I've gathered from your videos, I could cancel the program about abandoning payments and not have to worry about repercussions. Yeah. Is this correct? Any reason why I should continue with National Debt Relief? Can if you want. You don't have to. If you're having to go without because you're with them and your income's protected, you don't need their help. And okay, this is the answer I gave. I guess this was on a comment on one of our videos. I said, did they tell you when you signed up with them that your income was protected and you didn't need to pay the debt if you didn't want to? If they didn't tell you, if they didn't tell you that, which I'm sure they didn't, confirms that they are scammers when it comes to seniors. They withhold the most important information a senior needs to know for their own financial interest. Eric helps. Yeah. When owning a home and no payment anymore, will I just get home equity line of credit or talk with a reverse mortgage person for extra money to buy food and medicine? Can I do that? Well, okay. What a HELOC is that's an acronym. It stands for Home Equity Line of Credit. That's like a mortgage where you only pay the interest. Usually it's good for 10 years and then they automatically convert into a regular mortgage. You can get a HELOC, but the problem with a HELOC is it involves a payment. And then because of the payment, you got to make that payment. And if you're a lower income senior, that's one payment that you wouldn't necessarily have to make if you got what's called a reverse mortgage. And we have videos that talk about reverse mortgages. You have to have sufficient equity in the home to get a reverse mortgage. You have to be at least 62 years of age or older. The older you are, the easier it is to get a reverse mortgage. Hi, kitty. Kitty. Visit me. We have videos that talk about reverse mortgages. I live in Panama, the country, and I use my daughter's mailing address. Oh my gosh. am I here? Sorry about that. You may have saw that. I live in Panama, and my daughter's mailing address is in Georgia. If I'm sued or a judgment filed, what do I do? Well, technically, they have to serve you. Okay, so we've got a lot of clients that are overseas, and I tell them it's going to be difficult for someone to serve you in Guam or Philippines or Panama or Costa Rica or wherever you're living. Okay, but if you were sued, it doesn't matter if they get a judgment or not. Your income's protected. I wouldn't worry about it. But we have a lot of clients overseas that enrolling helps because they don't want to worry about this. They don't want to be harassed by creditors. So if you had an address in Georgia, it might be possible for them technically to serve the paper on your daughter there and they could get a judgment. But once again, if your income is protected, you're not going to need to worry about it. Okay? Also, I owe a debt to PenFed, not set up on autopay. Can I call them to cancel the account even though I still owe on a yeah, you could cancel the account. I don't know that you need to call them up. You can just stop paying the debt. You can just stop paying the debt. This one person writes in, they say, what if a judge orders you to pay it and then you don't pay it, then he gets me for contempt for not paying it in court? Okay. Okay. A judge can't order you to pay a debt. I mean, a judge can make a judgment and say you owe this debt, but he can't order you to pay a debt that's not their job. It's up to the attorney that sued you to try to collect the debt. They're the ones that have to figure out how they can collect it from you. Judge doesn't get involved in that. And if he did, the judge doesn't know what he's doing. Okay. There's a lot of imperfect judges out there. But this shouldn't be an issue. No, the judge can't order you to pay a debt. Okay. All he can say is you owe the debt. And then it's up to the creditor's attorney to do something. Okay. I'm looking at my cat. It's going crazy. I got 3 letters and never heard until yesterday. I get my social security number, but okay. Okay, I'm 77. I owe $5,000 in credit card debt. I've been paying $90 a month to each credit card. I live off of social security of $897 a month. Not very little money. My rent is going up. So if I quit making the payments to the credit cards and don't file Chapter 7, will my bank let me keep my debit card? And will the credit cards come after me in court? I have less than $15,000 in assets and live in Texas. No, you don't need to pay the credit card debt. You can stop paying it. Your Social Security is protected completely. You don't need to file bankruptcy. You could never afford to file bankruptcy in the first place. Absolutely unnecessary to file bankruptcy. You can stop paying. You're paying $90 each to 3 credit cards. That's $270 out of that's a third of your income. And then you got to pay rent on top of that. No, you stop paying the stupid credit cards. Yeah, the bank will let you keep your debit card. The bank will protect twice the amount of your federal benefits. $897, 900 times 2 would be $1,800. They'll protect if someone were to sue you and get a judgment, $1,800 is protected automatically. You don't have anything to worry about. No one's going to come after your assets. You got $15,000 in assets in Texas. Texas, by the way, has like a $50,000 wild card exemption. But no one comes after your assets, even when they get judgments. You're not going to need to worry about it. So they took $800 and left the Social Security amount in my checking account. Well, the rule is, Mary, is that twice the amount of Social Security each month is protected automatically regardless of what other funds are in there. So if you got like $2,000 in the checking account, in Social Security, $4,000 is protected, even if money came from this death benefit. I'd be willing to bet that the monthly death benefit, there's a state law that protects that. But from what I'm looking at, from what you're telling me, you may want to call us, but from what you're telling me on this little chat, your bank may be making a mistake. Or if it's a credit union, then they are making a mistake. We don't want you to worry, Brian. We don't want anyone to worry, and we want you to call us if you are worried. You know, we always tell our clients, call us as often as you need to. Yeah, there's no limits on how many times you need to call helps. So we're almost done. This is a question that comes up all the time. People about, you know, how old you have to be part of helps. But there's no age requirement. Several questions have come up to mind. What age is the definition of a senior? I would assume that once a debt is established, then that debt ends up on your credit report, correct? Another important issue, many seniors are renters and need to be able to protect their ability to find a place to rent. Anyone have answers or comments? And we would have answered that, but we'll close with that. First off, HELP stands for Help Eliminate Legal Problems for Seniors and Disabled. But in some ways, our protection is based on the source of your income. If you get Social Security or Social Security disability and you're younger than, you're not a senior, you can be part of HELP, so your income is protected. We've got clients that are in their 30s, 40s, and 50s that are getting Social Security disability or other forms of disability. You don't have to be over a certain age to be part of HELPs. Now, as far as credit is concerned, a lot of our clients don't care about credit. Some people that enroll in HELPs, they want to keep a credit card. They're current on it and they don't not back to another credit card, they can keep that credit card. We ask them that question. But if you want to rebuild your credit, we do have a program called 7 Steps to a 720 Credit Score, available for clients that have been part of HELPs for at least 90 days. And you can get your credit back within 1.5 to 2 years, maybe even quicker. You can rebuild it. Your credit is based on your recent credit history. So in other words, these old debts that you don't pay, they become history and they base your credit on your recent credit history. Since about 2018, 2019, credit reporting bureaus do not report lawsuits or judgments on your credit report. So if you're really interested, you can rebuild your credit. And we also have what's called a landlord letter we can give to any senior, whether they're a member of HELPs or not, that explains to a prospective landlord that the senior's income is protected, it's available for their needs, even if they have negative entries on their credit. And that can help you find a place to rent, okay? Same old comments, I'm ready to take the finals. I know that. I know. But once again, for those that are regulars, you understand that a lot of people like to hear it again, and then we get the same questions over and over. And I don't mind that, because, and you shouldn't really either. You can always stop listening if you want, but we want our fellow seniors to get this information, to get the right information, so that I just talk to people all day long that are so relieved to find out about HELPs. And so in closing, I'd like you to remember to share what HELPs does with others as appropriate. Press it if you can make a comment. You can call us on the phone, 855-435-7787. You can subscribe to our channel, do anything, what you think's reasonable. And we appreciate you. And tomorrow's going to be Thursday, and I will talk to you tomorrow. Have a great day. God bless.